So welcome to the webinar on Marry Beautiful and Complex Building Design with Functionality, where we're going to have a look at some of the modeling capabilities of Ecosym Building Designer and how we marry design specifically with those capabilities. So the agenda for today, well, we're going to start from the very basics of first time installing OpenBuildings, the new interface that you'll encounter within OpenBuildings, and it's worth mentioning that OpenBuildings is a rebranded name, formerly known as Ecosym Building Designer, to consistently come in with the other open products within Bentley, and that name change commences from update 5. We'll also have a look at some of the building tool enhancements. When I say building tools, I mean tools specifically for particular items such as railings and curtain walls. We'll take a look at some of the parametric modeling capabilities that's new to Kinetic, where we have variables and constraints and other capabilities there. And then we'll finish off with some computational design modeling.
So when we look at update 5 of OpenBuildings Designer, which you'll notice a couple of brand name changes there when you conduct your install. So on the left-hand side here, we see a dialog box which appears when you install OpenBuildings for the first time. And there's some key things here to remember. There are some additional options that you can install here, and you'll see on the highlighted there on the left-hand side, sort of 4 products that exist. Now, Descartes does require an additional license. However, generative components, structural synchronizer, and Luminar T, the demo mode, well, I wouldn't say the demo mode, but the cut-down version of Luminar T are all free for you to install. Today we'll have a quick look at generative components as well, part of our modeling tool stack, which adds a lot of power and geometrical flexibility to your designs. You'll also see on the right hand side there the configure button, very important. When you install both Ecosym and OpenBuildings, you need to install a data set with the product. Now, we have something like 16 different regional data sets that you can install. You can see here that, in my screenshot, I've selected both the US and the Australian data set. I would recommend installing the neutral metric data set because it comes with building examples and our training work sets. Okay, so if you want to do any training, online training, those examples are contained within the neutral metric data set. And it will just go ahead and download it to your machine and install. Now, if you've already installed the product and you want to either remove or add some of these data sets, never fear. Just go into your control programs, into program files, and right-click on Ecosym or OpenBuildings and hit change, and you can follow this process again. So let's have a look at entering the product. So what I'm going to do is my front screen here. Under the either the Windows key there or within the icons here, you can double click the screen. Now I'm going to run in update 4 for this particular piece now, and we'll have a little bit of a look at one of the features in update 5 in a little bit. What we want to focus on now is entering the product. Now, on the left-hand side here, you'll see this little bar that pops out when you hover over it. It's the example courses and news. So I do encourage you to head into that area and take a little look at what's in there. So it'll hit the internet and it'll load up bits and pieces from the internet, but on the left-hand side are some locally installed videos and example files. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, you'll see a little button next to each, and you'll have a little video that you can play, and on the right-hand side, you can have a look at those example files that came with that video. If you play the video, for example, we're going to look at bidirectional linking with Excel. then a little video will play inside your screen. Now these videos aren't too long. This one in particular is just under 6 minutes in length, but worth having a look at that, especially if you're dealing with data on your objects and scheduling and the like. This is quite powerful, the link with Excel. So in the middle here we have all the different training that's available. Now this is certainly not the complete list. This is ordered in release date. So to get to the training you're after, I recommend you hit the More Training button, and it will take you to the Bentley Learn server, which I'll just bring over to my screen here, and you can then browse for the product that you need there. Now, I will recommend that if you're familiar with going through and looking for you hit the reset filter and you're looking for EcoSim, that no longer appears on the list, and it's all down here under OpenBuildings. Okay, so just bear that in mind, that all the branding has started to move to OpenBuildings, and you can search for the training you need there. All right. And on the right-hand side, this is the latest feeds from the Bentley user group, or Bentley communities, as it's called. So you can click on any of these, and it'll take you to the Bentley community site, where you can either read what other people have questioned, or where you can seek guidance on how to do things, or ask your own question. And both the Bentley users from around the world and Bentley staff will be on hand to answer that information. So if we hit the right-hand button and head back to our main screen, what we have here is a bit of a change from V8i. We have what we call workspaces and work sets. So a workspace could be one of two things, really. It could be if you work specifically for a bunch of clients or a series of clients, you may set up your standards in a workspace for each client. Alternatively, if you're a smaller organization or a smaller company and you have a set of office standards, your office standards can live in there, and these can be built. On the right-hand side, what we have here is what's called our work sets, and work sets are typically projects. Okay, so all your standards would live in there. So you might have a big list of project numbers or project names. Now, delivered with the product out of the box, we list here the different regional data sets. So you can see here I have two data sets installed. I have the Australian data set and the neutral metric data set. So from there, you can then either create a new file, okay, and you can select a seed, which is like a template. Alternatively, you can choose an existing file here and go from there. Now, you may not know which file you want to grab. You can see a small thumbnail here, but it might not give you enough information that you need. So you can always preview this by right-clicking on one of the files. And if you right-click, you have a few options here. One of them is preview. And if you right-click on preview, you can then preview what's in the file. So for example, this one is a cell library. So it's previewing a curtain wall panel, and you can see along the right-hand side, because it is a cell library, I can flick through all the different cells that are in here to see which one I want. Okay, and have a spin around and a browse and the like. One of the other handy features on the right-hand side here is the right-click and open in File Explorer. So if you ever need to do, it's open on the other screen, but never mind. If you ever need to do any work within File Explorer, copy stuff around, that'll always take you to the location. So that's right-click and open folder in File Explorer. So once you've dealt with all that, then you're ready to go in and have a bit of a look around. So let's enter in as we are, and we'll have a little look at some of the new interface features that come with both EcoSim Building Designer Connect and OpenBuildings Connect Edition. So first things first, the biggest change you'll see is the ribbon bar. Now, the ribbon bar is becoming, it's more aligned with what we're familiar with the Microsoft products and other products out there on the market. I think in many respects it looks a lot clearer to new users, especially. The icons are nice and big and have a descriptive icon with a piece of text. So, for new users especially, it's a lot easier to work. However, if you're a V8i person and you're familiar with the old tasks interface that lives on the left-hand side here, there are ways to bring that up, and on our Bentley communities here, there is plenty of, a Google search will bring up the task operation and steps to accomplish that in order to bring that up. If you want to feel familiar with the way you worked back in V8i, and there's the task there. Especially handy as well because the key-ins have changed. So if you're familiar with your old key-ins, Q1, 3.2, all those type of ones, then you'll need that task window in order to do that. So what we have here is kind of we're able to move between the different operations within EcoSim. So if we hit or OpenBuildings Designer. So if we hit what we call the workflow area at the top here, we can move between different workflow areas. So EcoSim itself, or OpenBuildings as it will be called in Update 5, will feature building related tools. So for architecture will be walls, doors, curtain walls, windows, railings, etc. Structural will be beams, columns, mechanical, ducts, etc. So that's under the EcoSim area, but we don't want to stop just using building related tools in our designs. We want to be able to model and design with as much flexibility and freedom as possible. So that then leads us to some of the other workflows here. I'll just skip over the first two for a moment, but we come down to modeling. And modeling is your place where you do your generic or flexible free modeling types. So some of the key things here is dealing with curves and solids, and especially all the new parametric solids that are in the Connect series, which we'll cover in a bit, and surfaces. And the surfaces can feed into solids. Okay, so there's no design inflexibility there. Of course, you got your familiar drawing workflow, where you'll have all your drawing tools and visualization, where we can do various different types of visualizations within the product. And for me, I have reality modeling loaded, and this is, obviously this is where this extra license comes in that we talked about before, but it's where we can deal with things like point clouds, photogrammetry models, and raster images. So back to the main screen. So first thing we should probably do is lay down some elements on the screen. So I'm just going to go to my modeling functions here, and just to quickly get something up on the screen, I might build a quick profile like that, then go to curves and just draw a quick path here, something like that, and we'll just run an extrusion along that. So we've got something in our space that we can then work with. Okay. All right. So a couple of the new things that feature here is the spacebar becomes kind of interesting and important. So if we hit the spacebar on our screen now, what we get is what we call a pop-up menu. And this pop-up menu allows us to select some common tools straight from selecting the spacebar. So for example, if I wanted to look at some of the moving or manipulating tools in there, I can run through that. Or some of the change object types are living under there. So they'll just come off right on your mouse whenever you hit the spacebar, and you can get to those. Now these are completely customizable, as is the ribbon bar. And to be able to customize any of these tools to suit how you want, if you right click on the ribbon bar, you have customized ribbon, and it will then open a dialog box that will allow you to customize any of the aspects of this work. It will also put it in your personal DGN lib, so you're not ruining it for the rest of the company if you've got a central workspace. However, you can move it to the central workspace if you built something that other people would like. Now, there's a number of stuff that hangs off the mouse these days. So if I hold Shift key down and hit the right mouse key, I also get a viewing tabs window. So there's a bunch of viewing tools hanging off my cursor here. So for example, if I wanted to be in a wireframe mode, at the end here we have the select wireframe mode. Okay, and again, to go back to say our illustration mode, which is a slightly different illustration mode, it's Shift right mouse key, and we can change a different presentation style. In addition, there's some alternate ways to get to your presentation style. Here I'm hitting Shift, Control, and right mouse click, and I get this wheel. And again, these little pop-up tools are completely customizable. You can create your own. You just draw these up and use save views to save them. So they're quite handy to work with. But I could change back to that presentation mode as well. These are your standard views as well, so easy way to get to some standard views: front, side, top, left. And of course, you've still got the familiar tools at the top here as well. So for example, if I wanted to spin around, now spin's very easy. I'm just holding down the Shift key and holding down the middle key at the same time and just moving my mouse around. So I can do the rotation on that. Saves me reaching for the rotation tool up there. If I wanted to navigate within this thing, let's say I was to copy this up to there, one over to there, and I'm hitting T for top and S for front as I move around, locking it in and spacing. So if I wanted to walk through these guys, again, I might give myself a bit of perspective, say extra wide camera, and we can just roll through here. Shift and middle mouse button allows me to rotate around, and I can get inside my objects quite easy and have a good inspection of what I've designed there. Okay. The control right click also brings up a bunch of familiar tools as well, which you can get to by hitting control and right mouse click. All right, so that's your navigation, all relatively simple and standard stuff like double-clicking middle mouse button fits the screen, rolling the mouse in and out is zoom, and as we mentioned, Shift and rotate. Sorry, Shift and middle mouse button is rotate, and then we can roll and move in. Okay, so that's pretty much the core aspects of the interface. However, there is something that's very, very handy if you're both new to Connect but also new to Bentley products altogether. And it's the search ribbon area up here on the right hand side. And you can see it says F4, meaning if you hit F4 you can jump straight into there. But if I wanted to search for a tool, let's say it was something to do with line. Okay, so I'm typing in line, so there's a whole bunch of tools that appear here. It's quite nice to have the most recently used tools listing here as well, because you tend to go back to them quite often, but we also have, say, Place Smart Line. So here I can quite simply place a smart line. Okay, and it is a bit easier to work with your perspective camera off, so I'll just turn that guy off and go back to a parallel mode. So the search ribbon is very handy for finding things. Now, if you wanted to know where this thing lived on the ribbon bar, you could start typing in, let's say, I was looking for extend surface. If I hover over the extend surface, it tells me exactly where it lives. It lives under the modeling workflow, under surfaces, and modify surfaces. And if I click that, it'll change the ribbon bar to take me to that area. Okay, so this is an easier way to then go and find what it is that we're looking for on the tools that we need. Okay, so that in a nutshell is the new interface. Of course, you can hold right mouse key down as well, which also brings some tools on your screen. I use this one a lot. So right mouse click to select and then delete the elements. So moving forward, let's have a bit of a look at some of the modeling tools that we have under our architectural area, where the main focus today is on architecture, and we'll have a look at some of the main modeling tools under here. One of the new things that has changed in Connect that you'll notice is the property panel when we place these objects. So, for example, if I'm going to place a wall, it's a concrete in situ wall, then what we have is a completely different panel now. We get a little preview here of what our wall would look like in plan, and then a preview of what it would look like in isometric view. And then we have a bunch of properties of that wall that we can edit down here as well. Okay. So what we could do is place our wall down like this. Very simple. It should look like concrete in appearance, and if I cut a section through that, I would see the concrete hatch. So that's one of the main differences. You'll also notice once I place this wall, the ribbon bar changes, so it's context sensitive. It understands what tool we're going on and tries to predict what it is you might want to do with your next command, for example. Okay. So all standard stuff in here. We're going to have a look at the curtain wall tool in a little bit. There's been some good features added to it for update 5 that's coming, so we'll have a look at that in update 5. One of the newer features here, for doing railings, for example, they've added a bunch of tools in there for doing railings. I'll just get rid of this wall for the moment. But railings themselves, let's have a look. Pretty simple. You can choose from a predefined list. If you wanted to go and create your own railings, you could run into here and load the railing setting system and create your own railing through there. Let's have a look at this one here, this particular one. Okay, so the very basics of placing railing is drawing by a line. However, we do have other options for placing railings. So you can place by arc, from a line on a stair, or from a slab. So for example, with the stair tool, let's have a quick look at this one. Let's go and place that stair. Now you'll see the stair options here. There's 2 more being added for update 5, the winder and the spiral. But quite simply, if we were to place that stair and we wanted to place that railing on the stair, it's just a matter of choosing the railing and choosing the method of placement. So it might just be on the stair, and it'll place that like that. Okay. So pretty simple. Now that's all good with railings. However, we may want to get a bit more challenging. So let's say, for example, we had some type of terrain that we wanted to place a railing along. So I'm going to go to my modeling area now and just quickly build myself a very, very simple terrain. I'm going to use the surface tool to do that. Let's go to home and just change the color of that, make it a little bit more friendly to work with. That'll do. Okay, so let's just quickly build a surface. Oops, it's not part and family set there, but it doesn't matter. And what we've got is these handles when I select it. So if I use the control key, I can grab these handles and just bend that down like that. So I have, I'll bring it up a bit actually, just so it's not such a steep decline. There we go. Okay. So what are the, let's change the color quickly, and in plan, let's say, for example, we'll say top view, the screen. Okay, let's say we wanted that railing run to look something a little like this. Okay, we wanted the railing to follow that down. What we have here is our line work covering the surface there. I might come up here and look for a tool called the Stencil Tool. Now the Stencil Tool is kind of handy. It should stencil that that line onto the surface, which it does. Now what it actually does, it does break this guy down into multiple pieces, and I'll just shift this surface out the way slightly just so we can have a quick look at that. So what we want to do is combine this back up into a single element. So what we'll do is we'll use our create complex chain and set it to automatic, and we'll just create a complex chain out of that. Okay, very much like what the 2D tool does. So back over to our ecosim tools here, and we'll look at the railing tool. Now, one of the options here is to run a railing by line, and we should be able to click on that and for it to generate a railing running down the hill. Okay. Now we could click on this now, it's railing, and you'll see the ribbon bar change. Oop, let's do that again. Ribbon bar change to reflect we may want to have some other tools to work with. So let's say I wanted to move this poster down a bit, wasn't quite happy with its position. I can do that, and it will shift the post down to where I need it to be. Okay. So we're not fixed in with working with just the building tools in the one environment. We can actually mix and match the type of tools we'd like to work with here. So let's say we want to sit this railing on top of a concrete object. What we could do, and we'll just set this back to nothing. What we can do is at the beginning of this line string, we might look to draw a profile. Okay, so because this is where we may need some flexibility in terms of what we're designing. All right, let's do that again. Okay, let's give it a bit of a spin so I can get right on the end there. Okay. All right, so I'll just do a very basic profile to begin with. Moment, and then we can edit it later on. And sometimes it's a good idea to go to Wireframe so we can see where we want to find the closed off point of our little segment there. Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so once you have a look in Wireframe mode, you can see that that line string goes right to the end. So my error, always good to have a look in Wireframe to see what goes on there. Okay, so let's do that again. We'll just create that little profile. And there we go, right to the end. Okay, so now I can go back to a bit of an illustration mode and have a look at what we're doing. Okay, so that means we can always flick to our modeling tools now. So what I might want to do is run or extrude a solid along that line path. So it's the path, it's the profile, and I can then create that profile underneath. Now let's say, for example, I want this to be called something, in this BIM heavy world. Things want to be called something. They don't just want to be known as dumb solids. So what we can do is add information data to this. So over in the ecosim area, again, we have data reporting, and this is where we create, schedule, and add data to things. So we've got this attach box here. So it's attaching what we call instance data. So I might just want to call this a slab. Now, these are what we call catalogs, and they're all built into the product, and we can add our own. We can add our own catalog and anything within that catalog that we like. We're not fixed to what the product's giving us. So let's say it's a slab I want to call it, and I may just want to call it a concrete slab. Okay, so then I can click on the object, and you can see now that what it does, it makes it look like concrete. It'll cut like concrete, and in the schedule, data reporting schedules, it will be concrete. It'll list there, and will give us volumes and quantities and so forth. There it is. There's the total volume there. Okay, so from there we could say, okay, well I want to give this a bit of editing. So what you've got on these solids now, they're all parametric, meaning they all have history. So we've got these widgets that appear. Now this particular widget here, if I click on it, allows me to play with the profile. So I can move that profile out like that, and now that the railing is actually sitting on something. If I wanted to get a little bit funky in the design, I can hold right-click down over the widget and say Show Input Element. And what that will do, it'll allow me to do some 2D operations on this. So for example, I could insert a vertex. Okay, so if I pull that guy out like that, I can change the whole profile of the thing that we have here. Okay, it may be a case that I want to fillet this edge here. Now I could come back to my solid modeling tools here and use the fillet option here and start to let's give it a bit more of that and start to fillet the edges. But might be a bit big. But another way of doing it would be to fillet this guy here. So let's go and find our normal fillet tool. Construct circular fillet. There we go. What do we got there? Let's try here. We'll truncate both. So we're acting on 2D objects here. Normal 2D objects. Okay, might be a little big. We'll go try 50. Okay. All right, there we go. Now, because this isn't a grouped object just yet, because I've ungrouped it by filleting it, you can see it's left a big hole in the gap. So that's fine. What we have to do now is just create the complex shape again of our profile. Okay. And there it is. And then the final thing we would do is then replace replace the original object with this shape. Okay, there we go. So what we've done is we've just replaced a whole object with a new profile, and you can see now from very humble beginnings we have some good wibbly wobbly kind of geometry without that's not on plane and combined with all the information properties that we need. So that's some of the things that we can do there. There's lots of other things with the railing tool that's that we can do as well, such as break it and whatever. And so some of the new features we have there. Okay, so let's have a look at what we might have with this parametric modeling, which is kind of handy. I'll just delete that object there. Let's go over here to surfaces. So actually we'll start with curves. So as I said, a lot of stuff is history based now. So if I place a curve, let's say I place a curve such as that on the screen, and we copy it, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then we go to our surfaces, we can loft a surface along this. Okay, so there's our surface. It looks like this. So we've just developed some history within this object. Again, if I select it, we have the widgets, and the widgets indicate the different aspects of it. So if I wanted to, we can loft that up, and it should give us a further bulge in our surface there. Taking it a step further, we don't live in a world of surfaces. We live in a world of solid objects. We may then want to thicken this to a solid, so we can go to our solid feature and give it some thickness here, say 200. Okay, we might change that to backwards so it comes up in the air. Okay, so there we have a solid that's been created from this guy. And again, because we live in a information property driven world, we might want to attach again concrete slab to that so it appears like concrete and will act like concrete. We've got some funny geometry going on there, but that's okay. So what we might do is then have a look at what happens then when we play with the widgets. So we can loft the widgets up and down and still retain that history within the object whilst the object is being called a concrete slab. Okay, so we're not restricted to creating slabs just from the slab tool, and we can create objects that are complete with history, and have we can re-edit them later on with that history creation stuff, and it looks like concrete as well. Okay, so that's kind of some of the things with the history-based parametric modeling, but we can take that a step further. If I delete this guy here, we can also start to look at things like constraints and variables. So we have our 2D constraints here. Over on the constraint tab, we have variables and sort of dimensional constraints, and then we have some 3D constraints on the right-hand side. So what we might do is just start off very simply by creating something that has a constraint system involved with it. Let's have a look at creating just a very simple rectangle. So we might start with a series of lines. Let's say it was a series of lines that we had, and we wanted to constrain those up. So in top view, let's have a bit of a look at this. Okay. So first thing we might do is look at our variables. We'll click on the variable box. And with variables, we might say, let's create a variable called width and one called height. One called width, one called depth, and one called height. I should spell that correctly, shouldn't I? Depth and height. So I'm not sure where I got to, but I started talking about constraints and using these variables. So yeah, what I had done is I'd constrained up these this very simple box that was a series of lines to begin with. Now, what I might do here is I created the variables as well. So adding the variables is pretty simple. You can either do it by a single element, which would be this guy here, or you can do it by two elements, which I would select that one and that one. Oh, they're not parallel. So what I probably should do is make, I can constrain over constraints. So I've already made them coincident, but I can also make these perpendicular. So they're always going to be perpendicular, and then you could start to constrain up two objects.
Now, one thing we did see just earlier is order of creating these constraints and an order of doing things. So, what we did create here was individual elements which are constrained, but in order to turn this into a 3D object later, we need to make this, a shape in order to extrude that. So, if I go to the create complex shape and we're set to automatic and give that a run around, we do have a shape, but we lose our constraints. But never fear, we can always go back and constrain these up. Now, coincidence doesn't need to apply here because we've created a shape out of it. So again, it's just perpendicular to keep the edges perpendicular and never move there. So once they're constrained, we can start applying our dimensional variables. So here we could choose either by element or distance. I'm just going to do by element. And we just click on one line and choose our variable. In this case, we'll do width. Okay, so it's going to get a little smaller. Again, we'll do the side and we'll choose depth. And there's our box there with our dimensions applied. So of course, if we go and change the variable value, say of width here to say 3000, the box moves. Now, what we can do is just rotate here this a little, and if we go over to our solids modeling, we can give it an extrusion. And what we want to do here is make sure the distance is ticked. We can put in our variable of height, say OK, and we can loft that up like so. So this whole box now is as per the variables. Okay, so if we choose that to 4, you can see the height change. So that's just some very basics there of how the constraints and variables work within the new parametric modeling engine. And of course, it's history based, so those earlier values we worked with before will change. Now, one thing to bear in mind is to view the history of this object. We can go to properties, and within the properties tab, we can see how this all works. So it's governed by a profile, which is here, and then has various dimensional and other constraints involved, and of course those values can be altered from this box as well. Okay, so there we go, altering those values just in the box. The curtain wall tool has undergone some various iterations with the various releases of EcoSim and now OpenBuildings Design and Connect. So the quarterly release cycle has seen some introductions of a number of features. What we'll do is we'll go into a cell library and have a look at the way that we can create different components within a curtain wall itself. Now, because it's a cell library, if we open up the models dialog box, we can have a look at some of the components in here for different curtain wall panels. So, for example, if I double click on this one, this is a generic mullion. It's a 2D profile. Now, the nature of this is parametric in nature. So if we click on it, you can see various dimension constraints, plus also various elemental constraints indicated by these widgets here. So here we're maintaining a perpendicular edge to the barrier here. And here we do a dimensional constraint, and those dimensional constraints can be governed by the various variables that we defined. Okay, and those variables are under our constraints tab, and they live here. Okay, we also use variations to change or alter some of the variable values which we can pull in when creating our curtain walls. The other type of introduction in Update 5 OpenBuildings Designer is the ability to use a face definition to create a panel. So, for example, we'll have a look at this spider one here. Now, the spider one is using the old spider clamp method here, and again, it's using it's just a piece of glass and a clamp which fits on the end. Now, the key feature of these particular panel-driven cells is the shape that's surrounding the panel itself. So this is the driver for the outline of the particular shape, and you can see we have dimensions extending as an offset from that particular shape, which again is variable driven. So what we can do is, let's move to a file where we will take a look at how we can place and edit some of these new types of curtain walling systems. So in the old method, it was reasonably simple. We would have a curtain wall. We could choose one from our predefined list, and here we can set up some of the different settings here. Okay, and you can choose different settings here, and you had different place by methods. So one might be a line, it might be an arc, it might be a curve, it might be an element. Now we've got the addition from shape, but before we do that, let's have a quick recap of what the line option did. So if I was going to place the curtain wall on the edge of this slab here, you can place a line there and come up and adjust the height. I think we've got 4 meter floor to floor heights here, so we'll say 4 meters. Okay, there we go, and then we just click at the end, and that was a very basic way of creating our curtain wall. After then, we could apply edits to the system, and those edits would involve, let's just give a little bit more light on the back side of this, which isn't receiving so much sunlight from this angle. Okay, so we can change various things here. So if we click on, say, this transom, we get this dot. We also get a mini toolbar that you could be used to move, delete, etc., etc. So for example, if I wanted to move this guy, I could move him up like that and the glazing would shift to suit. We also have the ability, if we click again, to change the transom structure. So for example, here we have the vertical passing through the horizontals. If we wanted to have a mitre all scenario, we could click on there and we get the mitre all scenario. And of course, for example, if you wanted to, you could toggle the visibility of these guys. So you might choose to turn these off. So you've got then room to place in a door or a revolving door or something. But something newer we have with the update in update 5 is the ability to place by a shape. Now that shape could be any perpendicular shape that you like, but here for example what we might do is place a shape. We'll make it rotated for a start. Good idea. And you'll hit F for front. Sorry, S for side. And then loft that up to the top. So if we wanted to curtain wall up this guy, then we could. So for example, we might look at our spider system that we played with earlier, or we had a look at the panel that was involved in this a little bit earlier. Okay, again, we have various panels here. We might want to put in some maximum and minimum spacings. We know that the floor height is 4 meters, so we'll leave that at 2. And then here we may say we want a maximum spacing of say 1500. Now, there are other options here. For example, what we've done here is we've got a curtain wall panel. We have the mullion option, and I have no profile set here. There's profiles you could choose, and for most of these mullions I have nothing really set except for the external frame of this whole thing. Now, what we might do is rather than placing by line, we'll place from shape. And the key here is to delete the path so the shape does not remain in the view. So if I click on the object, you can see that the little outline of where it's going to place appears, and you click on the screen. Okay, and we'll give this a little bit of perspective and go and have a look at this system here. Okay, so we can see now that that system has been placed with our parametric clamps on there like so. Okay, so again, we do have the ability to edit these after the fact. So let's say, for example, we had a plant room at the back here. We might want to have a look at swapping out. Now we'll just go to camera off method. We'll have a look at swapping out this particular panel for another type. So in this case, we may swap out this particular type for some louvers. Okay, so we'll click on the screen, and that particular panel should swap out for some louvers. Okay, all right, so that's how that one appears there. So yeah, lots of good things coming with the curtain wall tool, or lots of good things already here, and lots of good things coming as well. It's also important to mention that in the next to the search ribbon bar at the top right-hand corner of the screen is your Bentley Connect advisor. So from within here, you can find out all sorts of learning material and quick tips and other information about certain topics. So for example, if we were to type in curtain wall, there's a special interest group recording presentation. So if you want to find out more information about the curtain wall, feel free to dive into the Bentley Connect advisor. So here we are in generative components, which is inside ecosystem. So as we can see up in the top here, we have all the different workflows, ecosystem. We have our modeling area as well, and we have computational design. So computational design is the ability to affect design and changes by setting up a governance of rules. So over here on the left, we have what we call our node types. Now, typically, these can be broken down into two areas. They're kind of like our ability to create things, but also ability to apply utilities to things. So, for example, I'm going to drag and drop a slider here over into our graph area. And the graph area is where we affect that change. So we're hooking up different things to different ideals here. So, for example, here right now, what I'm going to do is use this slider, and I'm going to pin a couple of different variable values here. So, for example, I'm going to put in a minimum value I want this slider to be to 10 mil, a maximum to, let's say, 2 meters. And what I'll do, it's produced a value here inside the node itself. So if I pull the slider back and forth, you can see that number changing. So what I'm going to do, if I click on this pin here, I can drag and drop the wire into the value here for expression 2. And what you'll see now is once I do a bit of dragging, you'll see that triangle lift and come back down. So this is really the effect of generative components is letting one thing or one movement or one rule affect many. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just flick over to our modeling tab, and in here we'll also bring up our level display dialog. And what we might do is just set a part and family here to schematic design, and we'll just choose glass, just so we can see through the surfaces that we're creating. So one of the very simple and basic ways of creating a surface is using the Construct Surface tool. And just on this slab here, we're just going to create a very, very simple surface, just like that. Now, the trick with surfaces in all the Bentley applications is once you click on them, you're given some handles. So if I was just to rotate to, say, a top view here, I might grab some of these handles by holding down the control key and just selecting a few of them like this. Okay, so what that means is if I rotate back to a, let's say, an isometric view, what I can do is grab these handles and lift that up like so. Okay, so that's one way of creating a surface, but sometimes we might want a bit more control over the surfaces we create. So we might want to look at, say, creating some surfaces out of curves. So let's have a look at placing a B-spline curve down first. So we'll place one down there like that, and I'm just going to copy it over. We'll just copy it over roughly 5 meters each one. We don't need to be exact. And what we could do, just so we can see these curves a little bit better, we might loft them up into the air a little. There you go. So you can see one surface appear, or one curve appearing there. I might, again hold down the control key and loft these two up like that. And with the same, I can just pull this one up a little bit like that too. Maybe at the end, just so I've got a bit of an entrance to this canopy, I can loft that one up a little. So back to our surfaces tab, we can use the loft surface command, and we may just run a line over the top, and we've created ourselves a little surface. Now, these surfaces have history, complete history. If I click on them, there are the little widgets that appear, and we can start to change the overall form of the surface by moving these widgets around. Okay, so we've got a couple of surfaces here like that. Another way of creating a surface as well that retains its parametric nature is by building a a profile and extruding that along the path. Now that profile can be built from anything we like. So for example, let's say for example we had a series of tangential arcs. So we might bring this over here and we'll create an arc by start, mid and end, and we'll just place that like so. Okay, there's our first one. We might we'll just unlock the thing that forces us to the floor, and we'll create another one. And then secondly, and then finally, we'll create a third one like this. Now at this point in time, these surfaces, or these arcs, are not in any way tangential. You can see that there as we spin around. They aren't tangential in any way, shape or form. And what I might just do is bring this guy just back up to there. So what we can do is start to use our constraints tools. So what we might do here is we'll use the tangent constraint, and we'll click on that one and click on that one. Actually, first thing we probably should do before we even think about that is make them coincident. So we'll click on that to there, that to there, that to there, and then we can use the tangent constraint and tangent these guys together. And then finally, what we need to do is make them one entire object. So we use the create complex chain. I'll just use the automatic method, and I'll click on the first one, and then it finds the whole series. Now, what we'll find here is that when we move this around now, the arcs always remain tangent. So what we can do is go to curves, run a little path along here, like so, and back to surfaces and use the extrude along, click on the path, click on the profile, and then we have another surface. Again, there's history in these surfaces. If I click on this one, then we can alter the shape or the profile of the surface like that. Also, we can alter the path. So now it comes time to apply that panel that we looked at earlier to each one of these surfaces. Now, here we're going to use a little bit of generative components to do that. Now, the key thing here with generative components is we don't have to move out to a different environment. We can model to our direct modeling or parametric modeling in amongst computational design, which is very powerful. So first thing I'm going to do is attempt to grab each one of these surfaces and turn them into generative component recognizable objects. So we might just go to our computational design workflow, and I'll come over here to my node types. So the first thing I do is place 2 points. I'm going to place a point out here and a point out here. Okay, and I'm just going to move these slightly. So the one out here, I'm just going to shift downwards, and the reason for that is I'm going to use these points to create a box. Within that, I'm going to tell the system to grab any surface within the box. I'm just going to move this one up here. Perfect. I'm going to use a node over here called a range box. Now, the range box wants me to indicate low and high points. So I'm just going to click on the low point and wire up point 1, and click on point 2 and wire it into the high point. And you can see, I'll just go to wireframe mode there, you can see this box featured around all the objects. Back to our illustration mode. So what we'll do now is grab hold of those surfaces. So we use the B-spline surface node over here. And this little drop down here is the method for creating surfaces. So with all the different nodes, there's many different methods for creating the objects. So I'm going to use one called from elements within range. And I'm just going to hook that into there. And you can see now that we have turned these guys into surfaces. Now, did the color change? Because my default color is up there and looking like that. So I can actually force color and other attributes of these objects. So for example, I might force a, where are we? Down here, general. I might force a color, and I also might force a transparency. So I'm just going to turn those two object types on, and we might make this one white, colored white, and the transparency we can have, say, at 50%. There we go, so they're back to being transparent. So what we'll do now is lay a point grid over the top of these surfaces. Now, under our methods of placing a point grid, there's many different types. One of them is by U and V parameter on surface. So if we hook up our surfaces here, now a U and a V is just like a X and Y plane. So for example, if I put 0.5 and 0.5, then I have a point lying halfway across each one of the surfaces. Now, one of the tricks in generative components is you can start applying bits of code to make a bit more power, to create a bit more power with inside generative components. One of the very commonly used functions here is a series function. If I type in series, you can start to see different commands appearing here. So the way a series works is you put a start point, which in this case will say 0, because a U and a V always starts at 0 and finishes at 1. So we'll tell it that we're going to start at 0, we're going to finish at 1, and we want to divide this up by 10. So dividing something up by 10 between 0 and 1 is 0, 1. And we close it off with the brackets there. So what I'm going to do is select it, copy it, and I'm going to put the same value in the V. Paste it in and hit OK. And then from there, what we can do is replicate this right across the surface. So if we hit our little down arrow, we can come down to replication. And if I enable that, I can change it from corresponding index right across to all combinations. And there you'll see our points laying right across the surface. So then it's just a matter of popping a polygon all over these points. So what we'll do, we'll grab our polygon node, we'll drag it in, and we'll do a polygon by point grid. And we hook that up to the points. And what it'll do is lay that polygon over the top. Now, a couple of things here. Each polygon is bending to suit because we've got double curved surfaces. So what we might want to do is, if we hit our options here, we can look at facet options. So here we can change it from quads to force planar so that the quads are always forcing the planar. And you can see a little lift there on the tighter turns. Okay, so what we can do now is we might want to turn off some of this stuff. So we can just select it, right click and say visible. Okay, we don't want to see the points. We don't want to see the B-spline surface generated from our initial geometry. Okay, so we're deep down here. We still have our original surfaces underneath that we were using before. So if we select those, then we can still see our surface underlying there. So for example, if I click on the widget here and lift this guy up a little bit, let's say we lift him up to there, you can see the transparent surface move. Now in order for the components that we generated in generative components to react, we need to come up to our Computational Design area and just hit Update Model and just keep an eye on those polygons there. They will move to suit. Okay, it's the same again with this guy over here. Let's select the underall surface and we'll just hit the up arrow there. So we move it to there. You can see the surface is transparent, just sitting under there like that. And again, we can hit Update Model and the panels move to suit. So we're combining our normal day-to-day parametric modeling with our computational design modeling here. So what we'll do now is look at applying that panel that we used early on to our script. So over here is user panel 4. That's what we created using the generate node type from that other script we had earlier. So if I drag and drop this guy in here, you can see here we have our polygon value, We also have the two expressions that we were working with earlier, and they have predefined values in there. So all I do is hook that polygon into there. So when complete, our panel that we created earlier has been applied all over the surfaces. Now what we might do to get rid of the green, we can just right click on polygon and say visible, and that will turn the visibility of those polygons off. And then we can maybe give it a little bit of camera, and we can start to take a little wander inside and have a look what's going on. Okay, so here's the stuff we created, and you can see that just having a little bit of a wander around, you can see the different effects of what this looks like. Just coming back over here to, let's have a look at this surface here. What we should have here is our underlying surface underneath, which we do. Again, if I drop that down, it'll drop down like that and place the surface down. And again, I can give the update model a bit of a run, and we'll have a look at then that panel adapt to its change. And you can see there how the changes made. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time to process, not too long, but a little bit of time, but it allows that overall change to occur very quickly and very accurately by just changing a couple of points there on the overall surface. So I hope that gave some good insight into some of the powerful modeling capabilities of OpenBuildings Designer Connect Edition, and how you can marry those beautiful designs and those complex buildings with functionality within the technology. As you can see, it's very free and flexible in terms of what you can design. It's very basic in some of its basic modeling capabilities, but also quite complex and powerful if you apply some really powerful functionality to it. So thanks again for watching this webinar.